Crucible of the Vampire, written by Amanda Murray, narrated by Gemma Lawrence. Chapter 8. Black Seeds. Isabelle looked pale and drawn when she awoke the following morning. The experience of last night and her disturbing dreams had left her with an anxious premonition and an overwhelming feeling of dread. She didn't believe in ghosts, but she was having a hard time rationalizing what she'd seen with logic. The last thing she wanted to do was face the Scott Mortons over breakfast, so she made herself a quick coffee in the kitchen and pretended that she was finishing up some work on the cauldron. She busied herself downstairs in the cellar for several hours, going through her notes. She was tense and unnerved, and every small sound made her jump. When she thought she heard Carl going out, she quietly grabbed her coat and slunk out of the house and headed towards the village. She walked hurriedly, checking over her shoulder occasionally in case she was being followed. Last night's rain had left the footpaths muddy, and little pools of black rainwater gathered in puddles on the road and along the curb. The spring sunshine had disappeared in last night's storm, and the sky was ashen and lifeless. Like the sky, Isabelle felt drained. The last few days felt like an eternity, and Isabelle wanted her old life back. She reached the phone box in an agitated state and dialed the professor's number, her hands trembling as she pushed in the coins. It rang several times, and then frustratingly went through to voicemail. Damn! Why was he never there when you needed him? Hugo, are you there? It's me. Listen, I know you're going to think I've taken leave of my senses. Professor Edward's answer phone, submerged under a pile of old maps and paperwork on his desk, was recording Isabelle's message. Although her voice was just about distinguishable, it sounded garbled and indecipherable, drowned out by the static and interference on the line. Isabelle continued with the call, unaware of the problem with the line at the other end. I'm coming back today. I'll call you again later. Please be there when I do, okay? I'm going back to the house now to get my things. I've got to get out of here right now. There's a train in a couple of hours. Isabelle hung up, looking shaken and tired. She replaced the receiver and stood for a few moments before she pushed open the door of the phone box and began retracing her steps back to the hall. She didn't want to spend another moment in that house. There was something weird going on, and she instinctively felt an involuntary premonition that something bad was going to happen. She didn't really believe in the supernatural. In her world, it was all about facts. Of course, there were mysterious things that happened, but mostly they could be explained away with rational thought and finding out the missing pieces of a puzzle. But Isabelle didn't want to wait around long enough to find out. If I can just get back to the house and gather up my things and catch the train home, thought Isabelle, everything will be okay. She stood for a few moments in front of the grandiose door, her hand resting momentarily on the handle. Maybe she should just go now. But Isabelle was a professional. She couldn't leave a job unfinished. And so she reluctantly entered the gloomy house. She headed straight for the stairs, walking more quickly than usual. As she did so, she glanced nervously into the library and up to the landing to make sure no one was about. Thankfully, she was all alone, and she couldn't hear anyone else stirring. A few minutes to pack, and then I'll be out of here, she thought to herself. Just as she reached the top of the stairs, she heard the menacing voice of Carl, forcing her to stop dead in her tracks. She turned around slowly to see him leaning against the oak banisters at the bottom of the staircase. The tension in the air was electrifying. She glanced towards the bedroom door. She was so close. And then back at Carl, who was staring at her in his usual impassioned way. Isabelle, I was wondering if you could give me an opinion on something I've been making, if you have a moment. He spoke in a nonchalant tone, his arms folded across his chest, a slightly vexed expression on his face. Isabelle looked ahead, wondering if she should just brush him off and keep on walking. But something in her manners forced her not to ignore him, and she reluctantly turned around. It was hard for Isabelle to hide the conflicted feelings she felt. She was desperate to pack her things and catch the train back to civilization. But perhaps she could get whatever he wanted out of the way quickly, and then get the hell out of there. "It won't take a moment," smiled Carl, giving false reassurance to Isabelle. She stiffly descended the stairs, trying to hide the anxiety that was building inside her. At the bottom of the staircase they turned and walked without speaking towards the kitchen. As Isabelle passed through the inner hallway, she glanced anxiously at the front door. Her natural impulse was to make a run for it, but somehow she just couldn't bring herself to do so. On entering the kitchen, Carl motioned for her to take a seat. She perched anxiously on the edge of the high stool, while Carl stood behind a wide stainless steel work surface. He was busy mixing some drinks, and the sounds of cutlery and spoons clanked and echoed unnaturally in the vast kitchen. "Would you like some refreshment? I've been working on this warm presse." Isabelle wasn't really in the mood for a drink, but she was too polite to refuse. "Yes, thank you." If Carl was aware of Isabelle's reluctance, he didn't give any hint of it. He pushed a small wooden tray in front of them, and on it were 2 old-fashioned cut-glass tumblers and a jug of amber-coloured liquid. The remains of a chopped apple and some spices lay on the side of the tray. Carl stirred the jug with a long spoon and poured some of the liquid into both glasses. He handed Isabelle one of the drinks. She held the glass gingerly, eyeing the contents suspiciously. She took a small, reluctant sip and forced a smile. "Tastes good." Carl put his drink back down on the tray without sipping from the glass and leaned forward slightly towards Isabelle. "I know you think you saw something last night. You seem quite jittery about it." Isabelle felt warm. She started to relax. Her eyelids began to feel heavy. "This drink will settle those nerves. It's a combination of apples, opiate honey, camphor, and exotic syrup. Black seeds. I can give you the recipe if you like." Carl's voice was becoming hypnotic and sounding further and further away. Isabelle grabbed the edge of the kitchen work surface with both hands as her vision began to blur. Her body was feeling heavy and she felt hot. She slouched uncontrollably in her seat. "I saw her. You're hiding something, you bastard." Isabelle managed to get the words out, but they sounded slurred and unnaturally loud. Her hands seemed to be losing their grip on the stainless steel countertop. She felt them slipping. She tried to hold on, but it was useless. She slumped to the ground. Isabelle lay on the hard, cold floor, staring up towards the skylight in the ceiling, which seemed to be getting further and further away, stretching indefinitely like an endless, darkening tunnel. Carl leaned over her twisted form, his voice echoing and distorted as he spoke. His face looked angry, lined with creases as if he was suddenly over 100 years old. "We're all just little souls carrying about a corpse." He placed his hands on her shoulders, and Isabelle tried to get up, but somehow she just couldn't find the strength. Isabelle's vision blurred in and out, and she desperately tried to focus. She couldn't decipher what the loud, strange banging noises were that were jolting and shuddering through her body. Gradually it dawned on her that she was tied to something and that she was unable to move. Someone was dragging her upstairs backwards towards the top floor. and the large metal wheels were making a clunking noise as it was dragged unevenly up the wooden staircase. Isabelle's head lolled from side to side, and the banging ceased, only to be replaced with the loud creak of floorboards. She realized that she was tied to an old wheelchair. She could smell dust and decay. The rhythmical sound of the wheels pulsed hypnotically. An overwhelming tiredness was consuming her brain and body. She tried to speak, but no words came out. The corridors had narrowed, and the ceilings were lower. The vivid pink and turquoise paint colours on the walls glowed lurid, like a hallucinogenic dream. She felt she was slipping over the edge.